What's up, everybody? This is EvanForGrips.com, continuing with Project Get Me Stackin. Today we're going to do something a little different, but it's still going to be very similar to what we've been doing before. And today I'm going to field 2 questions in one video. Why am I doing that, you guys asked? The reasons are, there are 2. 2 questions, 2 reasons. The first one is that the questions are very similar, but slightly different, and I think that the questions kind of encompass the same thing, but they've been worded differently, and they're a little different on the specifics of what they ask. So while you guys might think that one question has some merit and the other question has merit, they have kind of the same answer, so I just want to encompass everything in one all-exclusive response. The second reason I'm taking a double question in one video is because this is a concept and a question that's very important, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's something that's going to be very important to the future of your game, the development of your game, and being able to sustainably play poker and make money. So let's waste no more time. Let's get right into it. So part 1 of the question. Hello, Evan. My name is Sean. I don't know how to pronounce that, so we'll just go with Sean. I've been playing poker for a very long time now, but started to get really serious about it last year when I decided to try out lock poker on the new Revolution network. Since I live in the US, I thought it might be my best option. I have watched all your videos and would like to thank you because it's helped me a great deal. I just find that I am having a very tough time at the tables, even at 10 and out. Maybe it's just because the games are a lot tougher than they were. True. So my question to you is, how would you deal with very tough tables since the games on lock are usually nitty and it's just a lot of 3-betting pre-flop? What kind of strategy would you use? Would you loosen up or play tighter or just 4-bet a lot more? I seem to get tilted fast when I'm struggling for an hour or so and don't seem to be making any money and just steadily losing. And that is very important. Remember that, because we're going to cover that at the end of the video, and it's probably the most important part of the video. I would just like to say thanks for all the videos you put out there, and I hope that there are many more to come. They are extremely entertaining and educational. Always look forward to a new Grips video. Sean. Okay, so that's part 1 of the question. Dealing with tough tables. How do we adjust? How do we deal with a small player pool where we're limited to mostly tough tables? On to part 2. Hi, Evan. I've been watching your videos for a few weeks now. I would like to thank you for all the hard work you surely must put into your channel. I picked up a lot, like folding ace-jack UTG in the early stages of an MTT. Also, my results are improving both in cash games and sit-and-goes. Your clear-cut analysis of spots that come up all the time gives me something extra to hold on to when feeling uncertain. And isn't that something we all want? Some certainty and some confidence? Question. I play on PokerStars in Europe, where one encounters some very aggressive players from Eastern Europe. Especially Russians can go quite mad in some spots. Is there a strategy to apply beyond playing tighter? I figure it's profitable to play my top 5 to 10% of hands more aggressively against them. I've been able to trap them on occasion, but it still makes for a very swingy game. Could you offer further insight? Thanks in advance and keep up the good work. Greetings from Belgium, Luke. And that's a very common strategy that a lot of people want to implement, is they say, okay, this guy's loose, he's aggressive, I'm just going to really go for it with my strongest hands and I'm going to get a lot of value. And that's a valid strategy against people who are loose and reckless, but against loose players who really know what they're doing, it's not the best strategy. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation and talk about it a little bit more. Okay. The reality with playing poker in this day and age is that you won't necessarily be able to always find good games, especially if you are only playing on one poker site. Hint, hint. Like you, many people out there are working on their game on the regular, trying to improve, making the environment more competitive and more challenging. These games, however, despite the fact they are difficult, are fantastic for furthering your abilities as a player. And while finding juicy games is going to be more profitable in the short run, there is always a time and place for these tough games, especially if you want to maximize your long-run earning potential. A common misconception is that just because players play loose and aggressive, it means that they're spewy and bad. This is not the case. Waiting for strong hands, waiting for those top 5 to 10% of hands, and for these opponents to barrel off their money, isn't that likely to happen unless you've done the proper groundwork beforehand. They can identify if you are a type player. They have their Hold'em manager. They have their poker tracker, and they'll know to slam on the brakes when you show strong interest in a pot, especially if you do so by check raising. Don't let the cat out of the bag, guys. So, how can you overcome this? Well, you have to be willing to engage them and play into their pre-flop game a little bit. Just enough that you can get the action post-flop that's going to keep your win rate on the up and up. Okay. These games have a lot of pre-flop looseness, a lot of opening in position, wide ranges, and a lot of 3-betting. Let's talk about what adjustments you can make to make the most of these dynamics. Okay, like most poker situations, in these tough games, you do have options. You are not limited. There is not only one single adjustment that works best for these games, and whoever is best at identifying which of these options is best to implement for that particular game is going to be the one seeing the most profit. So here are your various options for adjusting to aggressive 3-betters. Okay, you've got 3. The first one, opening fewer hands and 4-betting more often. Why does this work? Well, if you open fewer hands, you're starting with a narrower range of holdings. So instead of having the top, 30% of hands, you have the top 15% of hands. And if you 4-bet the same range, well, you're going to be 4-betting about twice as often, because twice as often when you open. Okay? By starting with a narrower range of hands, you will have a good enough hand to 4-bet more frequently. You don't have to change which hands you 4-bet with, but since you are starting with a smaller group of hands to choose from, you just happen to end up 4-betting more often. Okay, the next option is to call 3-bets with more hands, so you're widening your value range for calling a 3-bet. Against players who don't have strong holdings because they're 3-betting a lot and just trying to apply a lot of pressure, your criteria for a value hand can widen. You can have more hands that you consider value hands, especially if these players play too aggressively or play poorly post-flop. You want to be going to flop town more often with these guys because you don't need to hit as strong of a piece to be able to call multiple bets, maybe to call off your whole stack, because these guys are just going with pure aggression, trying to get you off your hand. And so you just need to do what Antonio said against Sturz, catch a piece and hold on. Okay, and lastly, just because it's profitable to open wide as a base strategy, a lot of sites advocate, you want to open 50% of buttons, you want to open 30% of cutoffs because it's really tough to play back against that. But when people know to 3-bet a lot, they're kind of adjusting properly to that strategy. So just because it's a good base strategy doesn't mean you need to do it every time. Okay? Poker is about adjustments, and you want to have different gears and different styles. You need to be willing to deviate from your default strategy if you want to win the game of exploitation against your opponents. Now, some guys are going to say, Grips, I got that on lock. The 3-bet game's easy. I know how to handle that. What about the next level? 4-betting, 5-betting. That's where the real sharks are on point on the regular, and the newbies put themselves in awkward, shitty, unprofitable positions. All right, let's talk about it. How do we win the 4 and the 5-bet war? Because, not just for our ego, but for our bankroll, we want to know how to do this. A lot of people, though, they get into the 4-bet, 5-bet war because of the ego, and that's not the right reason to do it. Okay, the steps that you have to take. You got to identify which players are 3-betting and folding a lot versus which guys are 3-betting and then 5-betting a lot. Who doesn't have a plan? The guy who 3-bet folds a lot, this is the guy you want to 4-bet at a high frequency. Anyone who is 3-betting just because they heard it was a good move or they saw it in a video, they're uncomfortable with it and don't have a plan for further action, that's someone you want to be playing back at a lot. If they're already going to be a little uncomfortable and they're trying something new, make them feel more uncomfortable. That's what's going to make them more likely to make a big mistake. All right, the next step, the next guy you deal with is the guy who, he has a plan of which hands he's going to 5-bet with, and it's going to be a wider range than you might consider a normal, value range for getting in pre-flop. Some people say jacks plus ace king, that's what I get it in with. Some people are a little different. People who have really thought about this, a lot of them will 3-bet hands like pocket 7s with the intention of 5-betting all in, especially if they think you're going to 4-bet bluff too much. Some may do it with hands like ace-jack suited. Some guys will even do it with like pocket 2s, ace-5 suited, and 7-8 suited, because they just think you're full of shit most of the time you're going to fold to their 5-bet. Anything's possible. Okay, as a student of the game, your job is to identify which hands they will 5-bet all in with and construct an appropriate range of hands that you will 4-bet with the intention to call off to gain value from their 5-betting range. Okay. Now, the biggest thing, and it's something you can't really be taught, you just have to learn it from experience, but to know about it means you can think about it and work on it. The biggest thing with these pre-flop pissing contests is that often people will get out of line and take it too far. People can get trigger happy, especially when emotion is involved. Try to notice when someone is tilting or at a breaking point and is ready to do something stupid. If you can anticipate this shift in strategy correctly, you will be the benefactor of a light stack off. I mean, it's great. I loves me 100 big blind gift, don't you? It's important to realize that if you can land the big pot, you will win the war despite having let your opponent win a lot of the small battles. At the end of the day, the person who gains the most out of their opponent is the real victor. It's not the person who had the highest frequency of pots won. It's not about volume. It's about amount. It's kind of the same thing, but it's not about frequency. It's about the net gain, the final gain. So really focus on your bottom line. If you get caught up in short-term thinking, which is what Sean was talking about, he doesn't see himself winning right away, so he feels like he's wasting his time. And when you get caught up in that short-term thinking, you're going to get in the trap of feeling like you're getting run over, and you're going to end up playing back at the wrong time. You have to think long-term here and have a strong plan of action. So, think about how much you gain when you successfully 4-bet your opponent. Against typical sizing, even if an opponent has successfully 3-bet you 3 times, if you play back successfully, correctly, with a 4-bet on the 4th occasion, you're back to even. And if you're successfully 4-betting them anything more than that 25% of the time, you're making money on the overall 3-4-bet war. So it's okay to let them take the small ones if you're winning the big ones. And you can just take it to the next level for how often you successfully have to 5-bet versus their 4-bet. Okay. Also, since your opponent may be winning at a high frequency, he is very likely to get overconfident and get out of line, because winning builds confidence even if it's not a large amount one. It's that frequency, that feeling of winning. If they think that you're a pushover, which they may if they're winning a lot of tiny pots off you, they'll try to apply pressure on many streets. And if you plan your trap accordingly and execute it properly, you will be the benefactor of a big donation in a very high equity spot. There is nothing sweeter than getting 100 big blinds in when you have your opponent drawing dead. The key with these aggressive games, especially with the high variance preflop spots, is that you have to think long term. If you get caught up in the short run, checking your graph or your results every 2 minutes, which is a big fucking no-no in my books, and you don't see yourself winning, you're going to try to do things to force that graph to look different. This is a big mistake. Develop your plan before the session starts. Ideally, have a strategy for each of your opponents you play with on a regular that sets you up to win the war against them. I mean, if you play with these opponents every day, you have lots of data to work with, lots of stuff you can study, and you can definitely find holes in their pre- and post-flop game that allows you to win when it matters. It's not about winning all the small pots, it's about winning the ones that really make a difference at the end of the day. And also, acknowledge variance is a real thing. Just because you studied and you prepared and you're in the zone and you're ready to play your best, it doesn't mean you're going to come out of the gate up a couple stacks. You may have a rough start. It also doesn't mean that every session will be a winning session, but it means overall you should see yourself on the winning side. If the best players won every single time, there would be no fish playing poker, and the weaker regs would probably quit as well. Embrace the fact, just embrace it, that letting your opponents have small wins keeps them coming back. And that when they're feeling at their most confident, that's when you can strike them with the crushing blow that gets you back everything you gave to them and then some more. You know, and since their confidence is high, that's when they're most vulnerable. They're going to be ready to make mistakes because they just feel like everything they're doing is working, even if it's not justified. So consider those small pots you let them have as an investment to make your big victory that much more likely. Just remember that you'll only be the benefactor if you put in the time and effort off the tables. That's the best way to win in tough games. Be more prepared than your opponents. And I hope that is a pretty comprehensive answer for both the questions, and I hope that both you guys who wrote in about that feel that this addresses your needs and that you can apply this information to your game to no longer be annoyed with those tough games and no longer have the wrong mindset going into those tough games. They are a great opportunity to practice, and if you really do your work, they're a great opportunity to make money, because at the end of the day, who has more money to donate? Regs or fish? Regs have a bigger bankroll, so if you know how to exploit that reg, you may be exploiting them for a smaller amount each time, but you're going to get involved with them a lot more frequently, and overall that might add up to you making more money off a particular reg than you would from a fish, because a fish only has so much to lose before his account's done and he can't get in the game anymore. A reg is always going to be in the game, especially if he practices good bankroll management, and everybody tilts. So if you can figure out how to get someone on tilt and they're going to keep playing because they're one of those people who needs to book a win every time, you're setting yourself up for some very big potential windfalls. Okay. Now, that's going to wrap it up for the presentation. So if anyone has any questions for the Get Me Stackin project, please send them over to evan@grips.com with the subject line Get Me Stackin, and then hopefully I can answer your question and help you get stacking. Please, as always, leave your comments below the video. Let me know your thoughts on the presentation, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you think I missed something, if you think there's stuff to be added. Every time I've asked for comments, some of you guys have come up with some really, really great stuff. So I love to see that discussion. I love to see the thoughts flowing, and I think people might even benefit more from the comments than they do from the video. Maybe a long shot, I don't know. But it definitely enhances the experience and makes it that much better. And finally, if you like the Get Me Stackin series or any of the videos done here on the Grips Poker channel, please subscribe below to show your support and encourage me to keep on making those videos. If you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, you will be notified immediately anytime a new video is posted, so you can get the edge on your opponents and get this information before they find it. Hopefully, they'll never find it. Okay, that's going to wrap it up. Hope you guys found the video insightful and informative. This has been Evan for Grips.com, saying peace.